Chapter to file. This is an application filed by Berks Commons back on February 26, 2021. First PC meeting that discussed the proposal was March 16, 2021. May 18, 2021, the Township PC voted to approve presenting a draft text amendment to the BOS. That was a 4-to-1 vote. June 8, 2021, the board voted to formally refer that version of the zoning text amendment to the county PC. That was a 3-to-2 vote. July 22nd, 2021, Berks County Planning Commission issued a review letter. September 21st, 2021, the Township PC moved to recommend approval, with that motion ending in a tie vote, 2-to-2 with 1 abstention. Then in February 8th of this year, the board requested further revisions to be made after a public meeting, which my office did do. That takes you to the February 22nd meeting of the board, which authorized the public hearing by a 3-2 vote. That brings us here to tonight. There's certain advertising requirements that the municipality's planning code obligates the township to perform, which we did since the February 22nd meeting. So on March 4th, we sent a verbatim attested copy of the proposed text amendment to the Reading Eagle in the Berks County Law Library to make it available for public inspection. The ordinance was also made available here at the Township Building for public inspection. Public notice of this hearing was published in the Reading Eagle twice, as required by the NPC, one on March 7th and one on March 14th. So all of the advertising requirements, procedural requirements to consider a zoning ordinance amendment have been met. That brings you to tonight's public hearing. The ordinance that was finalized last month, I think, is in all of your possession. So at this point, you can deliberate, take public comment, and then we can close the hearing. And at a risk of repeating myself, I know each time that this proposal comes up in a public meeting, I go through, what the obligations are to consider zoning text amendment, what the options of the board are. I can do it again for about the 10th time. If everybody's familiar enough with the process at this point, I don't want to belabor it. The choice and decision ultimately is yours.
Okay, so we have a list of speakers. Okay, we have Kurt.
Can you speak up? I can barely hear you, please.
Kurt?
That was a mistake.
Okay.
I thought we just needed to sign in. However, I have a comment. I'm from Exeter Township. I have an airplane over here. It's gonna sound like a strange question. I really don't have a vested interest. I don't live in Morgantown, one way or the other. I just wanted to know if it was going to, I actually happened to show up here today just by accident, not knowing this meeting was occurring, just to ask, is this moving forward and when is it going to occur? I'm paying for 2 hangars, one here and one up in Fredericksburg, Farmers Pride. I just wanted to know which way is it going. That's all. And if it does go, how long? So I can kind of decide, do I need to keep that hangar up there or get rid of it? Are we talking years? Are we talking a couple months and the bulldozers move in? That was just a mistake. I thought we needed to sign in.
No, okay.
So that was my question.
Okay,
That's it. Thank you.
thank you. Terry Robinson.
Hello. In sports, there's a saying that's become popular. Trust the process. I remember with the Sixers, that was used over and over. Whether it's in sports or business, processes are put in place to accomplish tasks. Winning a Super Bowl, winning a market share, developing a community. Carnarvon has in place a process to develop a community to be proud of. Developers are given a process to follow to gain approval. This process has worked pretty good for many years. I began watching this process in October of 20 out of my interest in the Filer property. I watched Perks and Farino outline their demands to both supervisors and planning committee. The more the planning committee dug into and asked questions, the more skeptical the planning committee became. Some answers were laughable. Some were just not honest. Some were obscure. Few were straightforward. So at October 21 planning meeting, they voted no to the proposal. They had too many questions left unanswered. They needed time to rewrite the zoning. They also wanted to ask a few professionals about the property's best use. They wanted to get it right for the people. Fast forward to January of 22. After seating 2 new supervisors who were in favor of the Burks proposal, Burks made a direct appeal to the supervisor. Burks' displeasure with the process was evident. So instead of sticking with the long-standing process, the supervisors voted to remove the planning commission from the approval process. Without ever asking for a planning committee briefing on their findings, these 3 supervisors dismissed the planning meeting for being incompetent. They also criticized them for wanting to ask a consultant. They said that nobody needs any more information to approve this development. The 3 supervisors laid aside a process outlined in the township's directions to developers. They set themselves as the ultimate power. Don't question us. You know, I've seen that in Mr. Putin here lately. With this process now broken, we are here to review an ordinance approved by 3 men who are unwilling to listen to any cautions that are raised. Deaf ears. Some real cautions are, Burks said the township can expect $200,000 plus from the 230 houses in taxes. Less than enough to pay for the services required. Paul Jr.'s answer to that was, we can take money from the casino fund. That'll help balance it out. Great plan. When asked about the overcrowding of the schools, Gary McEwen gave 2 answers as to the available seats in the school district. His fall 2021 answer was somewhere around 700. At the last meeting, it was 1,300. Which is it? When asked about the impact of surrounding areas building plans on school enrollment, on building plans that would have impact on the school's enrollment, Twin Valley, Gary said he was not aware of what was going on. You know, there's at least 350 houses under approval in Honeybrook Township, and Gary is on the planning committee of Honeybrook Township? Honest answers. Get the idea? The planning commission was onto something. Robinson Township has houses approved as well. Class size will go up before the new buildings or buildings that will be required. And who will teach the increased children? Your taxes will go up. Well, Keith, you won't have any problem with that because your campaign statement said taxes should go up. I read your book. I could go on. The township has a process in place that ensures development that is beneficial to the entire township, not a few. You 3 have hijacked the process. You are ramrodding the development through without proper vetting. It seems to us that you are afraid of light being shown on the entirety of the project. So when Jeff Vickers called for a slow up on the process, you ignored him and pushed even harder to preclude your rotten plan. Why would anybody trust the process? Trust the process, not with you supervisors. From our vantage point, it looks like collusion between supervisor and developer. Something really stinks. You are doing all this to please a developer, disregarding the people, along with 450 signatures that said this is a bad idea. You should not proceed. You should restore the process for approval. Thank you.
Now, Mr. Robinson, for the record, can you state your address and not Morgantown Terminal or Airport Terminal?
There is no terminal.
Airport
Tenant.
For the record, can you state your address, please? Honest answers like you asked of us.
Does it really matter where they live?
I will give that.
I would like to know.
I will give it to Jeff. I'm not making it an open. Or, I don't want to address the.
Can we get Lisa's jurisdiction, please?
What's that?
Lisa, your jurisdiction? What town you live in?
Yeah, I'm a tenant in Morgantown.
Doug Thomas. There's Doug Thomas here?
Thomas is the last name.
Yeah.
Thank you. I don't live in the township, but I live nearby. My kids go to High Point. I do a lot of transacting in this community. Walmart, west of here. I'm constantly traveling through here, so I do feel like I do live here, even though my address isn't for your township. I would like to share some thoughts regarding the airport. One of the things that I think is so wonderful about our area is that it's unique. And part of the fact that it's unique is because there's a diversity of things in the area. There's farms, there's housing, there's business, there's entrepreneurs, there's industry. And to me, I would include that airport in that definition of being unique. The world right now is looking for diversity. That airport is diverse. It offers some diverse benefits to this area. And as I think about it, I ask you to consider the what ifs. What if we needed emergency supplies to be flown in? What if we needed food? The other thing to think about is the what ifs of our existing businesses that are here. Maybe Twin Valley Coffee could fly in some beans to roast. Maybe there's a seafood restaurant that could open up and that business could be flown in. Maybe we have another pandemic and medical supplies are desperately needed for this area. The airport would be very valuable at that time. I did not get to live here during the time when the rail lines were here, but I've heard about being able to get on the train in Elverson and go up to Reading and do some shopping and come home. I don't want to be here not having said anything at all about how I feel about the airport. And I think today we're seeing what happens when we have a lack of diversity in our transportation modes and methods of getting around. I don't want to cross one off the list. And lastly, I would ask that you think about the lift. The lift that you get from the kids that dream when they ride by in the school buses and they think about flying, or maybe the adults who are looking for a career change and go there to take lessons. And what I would ask, instead of doing away with the airport, perhaps we can discuss ways to enhance it, expand it, and elevate it. Thank you.
James Archer.
All right, so I've just got a few points to make that highlight a couple of things in addition to what has already been said. My first point is that actually we all know that Morgantown Township has actually got a history of poor decisions. It's what we call rape, pillage, and burn. The evidence is Walmart development, the Rite Aid, where we demolished that beautiful town centerpiece in the middle of town. The other housing development that recently come up in the center of town that got rid of all that green space.
I can't hear you, sir. Can you speak out? I can't hear you.
And then there is the casino. So it seems the township supervisors have a history of very, very poor creativity and vision. Can we please start to think beyond our nose and create a Morgantown community that is thoughtfully developed and has diversity, open space, and a novel concept, it's called traffic, that works. Morgantown has the opportunity to keep a unique feature. Do we really realize the consequences of getting rid of this airport? One of the last unique features that Morgantown has. After it's gone, we will be left with what? What is it that is so special about an extra 600 people and an extra 225 townhomes? We can go anywhere to find townhomes, but where are we gonna go to find an airport feature like Morgantown? Where are Burke's Homes going after they are done building? We will be stuck with traffic, congestion, more taxes, more crime. So the Morgantown Planning Commission has turned the project down, as has already been mentioned in previous meetings. There are so many unanswered questions, and the township still has not resolved the question of the fact that there are over 450 signatures in township files from community folks that do not support this project. Berks County clearly does not want the development. Berks Homes can go find 56 acres anywhere else to develop, so why is it that they are so enamored with this problem? Why are we force-fitting a zoning change on something that does not suit the area, does not fit, does not have support, doesn't help Morgantown, raises taxes, raises congestion, and creates more problems? Why are we doing it?
Tim Weaver?
Thank you. I would like to share this similar sentiment. Where will we go to find an airport such as Morgantown? The cost of replacing that in your township and in your community is astronomical. It would never happen. So to lose what we have today would put us in a very dark place in the future. As a pilot who has under 1,000 hours of flight time, just under 1,000, and over 1,000 landings, many of which occurred here at the Morgantown Airport, I have a vested interest in aircraft, restoring aircraft and building aircraft, as well as flying aircraft. I've inspired many with the joy as they rode along, and currently I transport people under the Angel Flight Organization. So I speak concerning preservation of Morgantown Airport. I ask all concerned to rise to a higher morale and know that your decision to preserve this property as an airport with some IOP footage will extend long into the great future of this community. As I speak with other pilots in the area, the need for continued use of the wonderful open space to land and take off is obvious. The need for hangar space is always increasing. The history of this airport and the benefits to our community are apparent as I read excerpts from some of these articles. In 1946, an aero club was organized by young farmers and mechanics of the community. It was known as Morgantown Aero Corporation and was chartered as a nonprofit organization. It stated, all for each and each for all. Members of that organization, Leroy Stolzfus, Malin Stolzfus, David Hertzler, Ralph Hertzler, Simon Zook, Paul Yoder, Levi Byler, Clarence Stolzfus, David Byler, Ralph Stolzfus, Emery Stolzfus, Raymond Byler, four were brothers, two were father and son. Henry Hertzler was a mechanic. They're pictured here in this photo. There was a club organized, and the safety of all was a concern of the members, and so they wrote up bylaws. Paul Yoder, president, Leroy Stolzfus, vice president, David Hertzler, secretary, Clarence Stolzfus, treasurer, Ralph Stolzfus, as a mechanic. They decided that the location on the Byler farm was the perfect place for the airport. And in the study, records show that there was a club plane used for many uses. David Hertzler has used it to attend distant cow sales, to get implement parts, to fly Puerto Rican workers from New Jersey, and for similar needs on his farm. Ralph Hertzler has used the plane to sow clover, and David Barler has flown it over the countryside to see where tomatoes are being picked in order to know when he can go buy them. There was a letter I received today addressed to the Board of Supervisors of Carnarvon Township. A statement in the early paragraphs of this letter says, first, the overlay harms and conflicts with the township's overall land use program by eliminating for future commercial use one of its last remaining large undeveloped properties in the heart of the township's commercial and industrial center with access to major thoroughfares and other supportive infrastructure. And forever consigning the property for a dense planned residential development. The proposed overlay and use of the property for PRD overturns and disrupts the sound planning that has been done at every level of government. It also states, the only rationale that can be gleaned for adopting the proposed overlay is to cater to the needs and financial interests of a single private developer. Zoning to accommodate the individual interest of a single entity goes against the core purpose of planning and zoning to develop an overall program of land utilization serving the interests of the community as a whole. Just to encourage you to think about the benefits of this property remaining as it is, and also working towards keeping and preserving the airport under township's guidance, perhaps funds from the casino or something like that. So any funds available to put to use to preserve this property is going to give value to Pennsylvania. Total jobs of all Pennsylvania 117 airports is 304,464. Total payroll in Pennsylvania, $9.2 billion. Total output, $23.6 billion in Pennsylvania. Aviation is not a dying and lost field to invest in. I encourage you to think about the advantages that bring benefits to a community. Such services include agricultural, medical transport, flight training, law enforcement, wildlife management, military exercises, and search and rescue, as well as inspiring the community from young and old. It increases the health of our community. Thank you for your consideration.
Sheila O'Rourke.
Thank you. My name's Sheila O'Rourke. I'm an attorney at Gibble, Crable & Haas. I'm joined this evening by a planner that we've been consulting with, Tom Comida. Jerome Skrinkowski is another planner that we have consulted with, who is at another meeting and hopefully will arrive in time to also offer his commentary. I represent a residential property owner in the Highcroft development downtown. I did provide a letter to the Board of Supervisors earlier in the day, and I have hard copies of that letter that I will hand out to the board if I may approach. urge the supervisors to reject the proposed overlay of Burke's Homes for 3 primary reasons. The first is that the proposed overlay is not based on any big picture, comprehensive land use planning. It is a bad policy introduced to serve the interests of a private developer. It goes against the township's ordinance, the comprehensive plan, and the county comprehensive plan. Second, there is real legal concerns with the overlay because it is inconsistent with the municipality's planning code. And third, this ordinance represents a specially tailored ordinance to serve the needs of Burke's Homes. It is based on the private interests of Burke's Homes and not the public interests of the community, which your board is elected to protect. I will take each of these reasons in turn. First, the overlay is not based on land use planning and is a bad policy. The IOP district and the property are strategically important to the township's future economic growth and development. The property represents one of the last undeveloped parcels in the heart of the township's commercial and industrial zoning districts. The property has been specifically identified for commercial uses based on its unique characteristics. It has access to major roadways, Route 23 and the Turnpike. It is served by infrastructure that supports commercial development like public sewer and water. It's proximate to other commercial and industrial zoning districts and established commercial and industrial uses. There are no sensitive environmental features on the property that would prevent its development from commercial purposes. Further, the township has an obligation to meet its fair share of uses. If it removes a significant swath of commercially available land, it may have to rezone other land in the future to commercial. Commercial development has major benefits to the township. It enhances your tax base. It provides services to the residents and community. It creates business opportunities. It creates jobs. It is less impactful on public services, utilities, and the public school system. Burke's Homes overlay will only burden the township. It's proposing 221 new dwelling units, although the ordinance that it drafted would permit even more units. Residential uses have greater demands on municipal facilities and services. It would have a significant impact on your public school system. It would require new roads that Burke's Homes has said it would dedicate to the township for the township to fund and maintain. It would have a higher burden on your emergency services. It would generate less real estate tax per square foot, and it would not generate any business taxes like the earned income tax and local services tax. The importance of the IOP district and the property for future economic development have been recognized at every level of government and planning. The overlay district directly conflicts with your zoning ordinance, the multi-municipal comprehensive plan, and your county comprehensive plan. With regard to the zoning ordinance, the specific intent of the IOP district is to provide for commercial and office uses, with most residential uses being specifically excluded. I'm quoting your ordinance. There are 20 commercial and institutional uses that are permitted by right in the IOP district. Further, by special exception, uses of the same general character are permitted. This zoning district is widely open to commercial uses. The only residential type use, the residential air park development, is being considered by your board for removal from the ordinance. Just as an aside, I've heard comments at other meetings and read them in the newspaper that the township should not stand in the way of the property owners, Mr. and Mrs. Byler, selling this property to Burke's Homes. That is simply not how it works. There are numerous permitted uses in the IOP district that Mr. and Mrs. Byler or a buyer could establish on this property. It is not the township's job to it is the township's job to plan and zone for the good of the community, not to facilitate the private sale of a property
based on the individual interests of a property owner and the buyer. In sum, the overlay goes against the specific intent and allowed uses of the IOP district. Furthermore, it directly conflicts with the multi-municipal comprehensive plan that this township adopted less than 2 years ago. Carnarvon Township is part of a multi-municipal comprehensive plan with Robeson Township, Union Township, and Birdsboro Borough. Your township directly participated in planning and adopting this plan, and it did so in 2020. The future land use plan to the comprehensive plan is attached as Exhibit C to my letter. It identifies the property and the IOP district for future commercial use. It specifically states that it is not for residential or even mixed commercial and residential use. The plan states it is intended to provide for a wide range of commercial development. As opposed to the mixed residential commercial areas, these areas should provide opportunities for gas stations, vehicle sales, drive-through restaurants, and other similar uses. Only 3.5% of the land in the regional comprehensive plan is zoned commercial, and this property in the IOP district is integral to that plan. Finally, the overlay conflicts with the county comprehensive plan. The county comprehensive plan includes the property as an economic development area. A figure is included as Exhibit D of my letter that I just handed you. The county plan states that EDAs are carefully identified groups of parcels suited for commercial and industrial development. I quote, "It is recommended that municipalities restrict residential development in these areas." The plan further states an express purpose of EDAs to discourage existing industrial zone land that has a good location, infrastructure and utilities, and is land largely free of environmental constraints from being converted to other uses such as residential development. That description exactly describes this property. The County Planning Commission's review letter also confirmed that this overlay is inconsistent with the plan. For all of those reasons that go to my first point, the proposed overlay is bad policy without any support and good planning. Secondly, the proposed overlay is inconsistent with the municipality's planning code. As your board is aware, the municipality's planning code is the state law that authorizes municipalities to enact zoning ordinances. Section 603 of the MPC states, zoning ordinances adopted by municipalities shall be generally consistent with a municipal or multi-municipal comprehensive plan. If they're not, the MPC requires that you amend your comprehensive plan. As I thoroughly explained, this overlay is diametrically opposed to the multi-municipal comprehensive plan. It would allow a dense planned residential development in an area that is designated for commercial growth and that specifically states you are not to develop it with residential. Your board, along with its regional partners, adopted the comprehensive plan less than 2 years ago. In the current posture, where the proposed ordinance conflicts with the existing comp plan, your board should not adopt it based on the restraints of the MPC. Furthermore, the overlay does not comply with the MPC provision authorizing overlay zoning. Section 605 of the MPC authorizes additional classifications within existing zoning district, which is what's being proposed here. It's an overlay that lays over the top of the IOP district. Courts have said that an overlay is only allowed to supplement a zoning district, not to supersede it. Overlays are only allowed to regulate certain special geographic and environmental features. You'd be familiar with overlays like a floodplain overlay, an airport overlay, and a historic district overlay. None of these authorized reasons apply here. This overlay does not supplement the IOP district. It's the plan set. It allows a residential use that is explicitly not permitted within this zoning district. For this reason, it's my opinion that the MPC does not sanction or support this proposal. Finally, the overlay has no relation to the public health, safety, and welfare because it is a specially tailored ordinance designed to facilitate the development objectives of a private developer. Burke's Home's objective is to construct 221 housing units on the property, maybe more. It has presented to the township the proposed overlay precisely to accomplish its development objectives. It is clear that this ordinance is not based on sound planning principles that can consider the overall needs of your community, but instead focus on the specific needs of Burke's Homes. For example, the proposed overlay would be permitted by right without the review and oversight of a conditional use hearing before your board or a special exception hearing before the zoning hearing board. This would deprive the township of the opportunity to impose conditions. I know it has been indicated at other meetings that there would be some sort of a planned residential development review, but I don't see specific reference to that in the overlay. The overlay sets forth a maximum density of 6 dwelling units per acre. This provision would allow 304 dwelling units on this property. There is nothing requiring Burke's Homes to stick to the design that it shared with you. There is nothing preventing Burke's Homes from maxing out the terms of the proposed overlay for housing density, especially if this use is permitted by right. The overlay departs from the township's existing planned residential ordinance in ways that allow Burke's Homes development to be denser and more intense. The overlay would have less open space than your PRD ordinance. Your PRD ordinance requires open space to be at least 1 acre in size. There's no such requirement here. Dwellings could be farther away from that shared open space in this overlay district. To conclude, the ordinance before you serves the private interest of a single developer and not the public interest of this community. The property represents one of the township's last major opportunities to shape its future and plan for future economic growth and the development of the township, to provide services, jobs, business opportunities, and improve the tax base. Approving Burke's Homes ordinance allows a private developer to literally write the future of this township. This is a very important decision to the township's future. Burke's Homes proposal goes against all of the sound planning that your township has done, along with its regional partners and the county. It directly conflicts with your zoning ordinance, the regional comprehensive plan, and the county comprehensive plan. It does not comply with state zoning law. It does not serve the community's interests. It serves Burke's Homes' private financial interests. Your job as elected officials is to look out for the interests of the community, the people who are here before you saying no to this amendment. Burke's Homes is only looking out for its own interests. Please listen to, protect, and plan for your community. Reject this amendment. Thank you.
So Mr. Tom Comida is a professional planner who has consulted with us on this project. I do have both a resume and a comment letter that, if I may hand it up to the board. like to just bring out Mr. Kmita's professional background and then allow him to review the letter that he has prepared reviewing this overlay ordinance. So Mr. Kmita, if you just state your name and occupation.
Yes, my name is Thomas J. Kmita, spelled C-O-M-I-T-T-A. I'm a town planner and landscape architect from Westchester, Pennsylvania.
How many years have you been practicing in your field?
48.
Could you please describe your educational background?
Yes, I have a Bachelor of Science, Landscape Architecture, 1971 from Penn State, with a minor in Community Development, and I have a Master of Landscape Architecture from Harvard University, with a minor in Environmental and Regional Planning.
Do you hold any licenses or certificates?
Yes, I'm a certified member of AICP, American Institute of Certified Planners, since 1977. I'm an accredited member of CNU, Congress for the New Urbanism, since 1995, and I'm a registered landscape architect in Pennsylvania since 1991.
Could you please describe your employment history?
Yes, I'm the president of Thomas Kmita Associates Incorporated, Town Planners and Landscape Architects. And this year we celebrate our 41st anniversary. I worked 7 years for other entities. 2 years out of grad school at Weston Environmental Engineers, and then 5.5 years in a partnership similar to what I'm doing today.
Could you please describe your professional experience and areas of expertise?
Yes. In the 48 years that I've worked, I've represented 133 municipalities, mostly in Pennsylvania, and currently our firm, Thomas Kmita Associates, represents 23 municipalities as their planning consultant in Pennsylvania.
Have you prepared comprehensive plans and zoning ordinances?
Yes, many. I've prepared more than 60 zoning ordinances and over 50 comprehensive plans. I've reviewed over 5,000 land development plans, and I've testified as an expert witness in over 1,200 hearings.
Did you review the proposed ordinance of Burke's Homes for this overlay district?
Yes, I did.
Did you review any other documents related to the proposed ordinance?
I reviewed the existing zoning ordinance, the multi-municipal comprehensive plan, the Berks County comprehensive plan.
Did you prepare any written comments on the overlay?
Yes.
And are all of the opinions that you'll offer today to a reasonable degree of professional certainty?
Yes.
Mr. Kmita, would you kindly review your comments for the board?
Sure. And has the board received a copy?
Yes, they have both your resume and the comments.
Okay, thank you. I'll be brief. The comments are dated today, March 22nd, 2022, and consist of 3 pages. My first comment as overview is the Carnarvon Township Board of Supervisors should reject the proposed zoning ordinance amendments, as I believe the amendments constitute a form of, be very careful and slow in saying these words, special interest legislation, and I put that in quotes, intended to benefit only one equitable property owner. Second, the Board of Supervisors should reject the proposed zoning ordinance amendment for the reasons described below. First, it's inconsistent with the IOP district, which pertains to non-residential uses. Second, the purpose of the IOP district is to promote commercial uses. There are other zoning districts in Carnarvon Township that allow residential uses. There are 20 permitted commercial uses that already are permitted in the IOP district. Plus, very important, plus there are uses of the same general character that are allowed in the IOP district by special exception, which, as you know, means that in addition to those 20 enumerated uses, uses of the same general character could be applied for. Recent amendments to the IOP district prior to the amendments being discussed this evening have already expanded opportunities for commercial uses. Another point for rejecting the ordinance is the inconsistency with the multi-municipal comprehensive plan that just within the last few years identified the IOP district for commercial use. Another point is that section 603, small letter J, of the Pennsylvania Municipalities Planning Code, also known as Act 247 as amended, indicates that zoning ordinances should be consistent with the comprehensive plan, and the text amendment to the IOP district would create an inconsistency. Second, the ordinance amendments would be inconsistent with the recently adopted multi-municipal comprehensive plan. Since the future commercial use designation in the multi-municipal comprehensive plan was valid just 2 years ago, it should still be valid in 2022. The Carnarvon Township Planning Commission did not recommend the adoption of the ordinance because they considered non-residential use to be most appropriate. Further, my report indicates that the overlay is inconsistent with the Berks County Comprehensive Plan, which designates the IOP district both as existing and future commercial area. The Berks County Comprehensive Plan considers the IOP district as an economic development area for non-residential uses. This was described by the Berks County Planning Commission in their letter dated July 22, 2021, which Sheila O'Rourke attached as an exhibit to the letter. Next, the overlay is inconsistent with the Pennsylvania Municipalities Planning Code related to overlay zoning and section 605 in particular. In my 48-year career, I've written probably over 25 overlay districts, all the while relying on the enabling authority and the statute in 605, and I've never done it the way this is being proposed, so I agree with what Sheila just said ahead of me. The overlay supersedes rather than supplements the IOP district. I believe it has no relation to public health, safety, and welfare because, in particular, it's a form of special interest legislation designed to facilitate the development objectives of a private developer. Now, all of that is somewhat related and a summary of what Sheila O'Rourke said. But realize this, if you ask yourself the question, why do I consider it special interest legislation? Look at the current ordinance, which limits to 4 the number of dwelling units per acre that are allowed in a residential district for PRD. This ordinance allows 6, so that Berks Home can get the number of homes they show in their concept plan. Further, your current ordinances require 40% open space. Instead, the ordinance under consideration reduces it to 30%. Why? In order to facilitate the Berks plan. So it's pretty clear that the proposed R4 planned residential development conceptual site plan that Berks submitted dated April 30, 2021, and your ordinance fit hand in glove. They don't need to fit hand in glove. If you have great sympathy for residential use, why do you have to increase the density and reduce the open space just to enable the plan that's just a concept plan? Think about that, please. So in conclusion, I say do not adopt the proposed text amendment. It's not consistent with the township, multi-municipal, and county planning documents. And second, as has been mentioned by a few other people and Sheila O'Rourke, accept the advice of the Carnarvon Township Planning Commission and the Berks County Planning Commission. do not adopt the proposed text amendments as especially described in the Berks County Planning Commission letter. So that, Sheila O'Rourke, that concludes a summary of my report.
Thank you, Mr. Committer.
You're welcome.
Finally, we hoped that Mr. Skrzynkowski would be here, but it looks like this meeting has moved a little faster. I do have his comprehensive report to hand up to the board.
And who was that?
Jerome Skrzynkowski, Hawk Valley Associates,
okay.
another certified planner. So again, I wish that Mr. Skrzynkowski was here, but I can briefly review for you. Mr. Skrzynkowski's resume is appended to the back of your packet. He comes with 37 years of planning experience. Similar to Mr. Committee, he's a certified planner. He has worked on 31 municipal comprehensive plans and master plans, 42 zoning ordinances, 24 subdivision and land development ordinances. He does economic development and revitalization plans, community and fiscal impact assessment reports. His more than 40-page report goes through a comprehensive review of the proposed overlay, the existing land use in the township, the future land use. It does a zoning assessment, a community development assessment, an economic and fiscal impact assessment, and then provides conclusions and recommendations. I just want to highlight for the board a number of areas, and I won't repeat what's already been said. His report does run through a lot of the observations that I had and that Mr. Committee had. But I thought it would be particularly interesting for the township and the board, Mr. Skrzynkowski's fiscal impact assessment. On page 14 of his report, he states, Berks Homes has submitted documents in order to demonstrate how the PRD will provide financial benefits to Carnarvon Township, Twin Valley School District, and/or Berks County. Hawk Valley Associates disputes any claims or assumptions that a PRD containing 221 residential units will create minimum fiscal impacts within the community. Residential uses require more demands on community facilities and services. Residential uses will create a significant impact on the Twin Valley School District. Residential uses will require new roads that will need to be maintained over time. Residential uses will have a higher demand on emergency management services. They will generate between 5.86 and 9.57 vehicular trips per day. They will generate 0.99 vehicular trips per peak hour. They will have a greater impact on utility services. They will require a greater demand on parks and recreation uses. They will generate less real estate taxes revenues per square foot. They will not generate any earned income taxes or local services taxes. After performing his comprehensive review, on page 15, Mr. Skrzynkowski provides 14 conclusions and recommendations. His ultimate conclusion, and I quote, "The ultimate conclusion of this land use and zoning assessment report is that the Carnarvon Township Board of Supervisors should reject the proposed IOP overlay district as contrary to sound land use and planning, considering the existing and future land use plan that has been established for Carnarvon Township." I encourage the board to take time and review this report. I think it is very illuminating, very well done, and extremely helpful. Thank you.
Laura?
Hi, my name's Laura Bardo. I'm a resident of Hycroft and live in Carnarvon Township. And I'm here to speak on behalf of myself and my neighbors. Several years ago, there was a plan brought before the board and the zoning commission or planning committee to develop with the existing zoning, and it was to put a warehouse in, and the residents spoke out loudly and clearly that they did not want a warehouse or other commercial development in that property, and they specifically wanted residential use. The zoning / planning commission, I'm sorry, I don't know what it's called specifically, directed the dealers to go back and come back with a plan for residential development, which they've done. The airport's lovely. Nobody's offered to build an airport. Nobody can finance an airport. Nobody can make it fiscally viable. So it's not an option. The option here is, what do we want to use this land for? We have tons of commercial property not being used. It's sitting empty. And in order to get more people developing commercial works and offices and restaurants, we need more people living. So on behalf of myself and my neighbors who live in Highcroft, we would just like to speak loudly for the approval of the IRP zoning overlay and residential development. Thank you.
The minutes need to reflect that all of the documents and notices that I mentioned at the beginning are available at the Township Building for anybody to see. The documents presented by Attorney O'Rourke can also be included as part of the record for this hearing, and they will be made available at the Township Building as well in the future.
I'd like to make a comment, and I wasn't going to, but there's some misstatements that I want to clarify. So am I allowed to make a comment?
Go ahead.
Okay. Mr. Commit and also Hawk Valley were the two firms that the planning board was considering hiring to look at the land and development plan. So they kind of had a vested interest in the project. So I just want to put that out there so people are aware of that. In reference to the special interest that was indicated, I believe that if you go back in time, the Highcroft neighborhood should not really have been there. It should have been all commercial. I think that this project is a good transitional from the commercial from the residential to the commercial. And to be honest, I know other people, developers that would be interested in this property that will not be work with us as well as Berks would. And in reference to the comprehensive plans, both the county and ours and the regional plan, it's recommended we follow them by law. We don't have to follow the county plan or the regional plan. I've actually called the county directly. They indicated that technically that is like a little commercial Keystone Opportunity Zone type thing on that. They really want houses in Berks County. There's not many places in Berks County that the pricing is there for developers to build houses. We are very commutable, to the farmers and all the companies to the east. A good part of the community is interested in more of grocery stores, more things in the community. You're not going to get that without rooftops. Okay. Right now, with the way our economy is, there's really no need to have an office park at this point. We're not Hamburg. We're not going to be building all these little businesses, and retail doesn't work. So there's really I don't know what would go in there. It's going to get sold, unfortunately, because the airport's cute, but we have to also think of if this doesn't happen, something's going to be there, and it's not going to be an airport in the long run. And another comment: almost all the speakers don't live in the community. I have an attorney who had 2 expert witnesses who portrayed as expert witnesses that she represents me in Highcroft. I'm not sure who, but that everybody who spoke were actually renters in the airport. I mean, I would have loved you guys have got together back in 2018 and bought it, but you're kind of late to the game. So I'd love to have had it happen, but You know, at this point, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the plan at hand. Thank you.
With that, then the hearing can be closed, and the board will return its focus to a vote. I will, I feel obligated as your attorney to tell you again what the scenarios are and what your options are. You can vote to enact the proposed zoning text amendment as is. It's a legislative activity, so therefore there is no obligation for you to approve the zoning text amendment, and there is no time frame or deadline for you to take action. Clearly, Berks wants a decision, but they don't control the timing. You can also take it under advisement. There's no rule that you have to vote on the same night as the public hearing. So you've held the hearing. It's entirely now to your discretion. Now, Attorney O'Rourke is an advocate, and she's a good one. My role in this kind of context is not to be an advocate for or against the ordinance itself, but to make sure that you comply with the MPC, and to the extent that there are certain legal decisions or arguments being cited, there's certainly another side to that. And so I generally review the ordinance and find it lawful, with the caveat that there's a bunch of information being presented tonight for the first time, and I've had the chance to take a look at Ms. O'Rourke's lengthy letter, but I've not had a chance to take a look at Mr. Grinkowski of Hawk Valley Associates. So to the extent that there's new information or different information here, I can't comment on that. So that's about all I can say here at the moment. It's really, my job's the easy job. It's the hard choice is now yours on how you wish to proceed.
Well, I can tell you, I still stand that we should have hired someone professional to present these to us so we can review them and put something together instead of taking what the builder hands us. I mean, there were discrepancies, there are things that are different than what could have been. I mean, like the open space percentage and stuff, and the number of homes that are being crammed in there. And I just don't think we should vote on this until I think we should hire a professional to review it with us, so we do it right. It can only be done once. And I don't think it's a waste of money.
Anybody in here that owns land in Morgantown has the right to sell their property. But I don't wanna see the airport go. Ralph Mercer was my neighbor. He used to have his plane behind his barn in the pasture. I just where you fly out of. You know, and Vernon and his family, you know, they have the right to sell it. And I know it was brought up earlier about the Morgantown Hotel. I own that. My family owned it over 20 years. And I fought that in this township planning commission for years until the statute of limitation ran out. That's how long it went. That's the only reason I was able to sell it. But at a township meeting, I told them how much Rite Aid was paying me, and I said, anyone in this room wants to pay me that, I'll sell it to you now. And you could have heard the pin drop. And that's the kind of stuff, Vernon needs it. He's been trying to sell this since 2017, right, Vernon? I mean, that's almost 5 years been going with this thing. I understand, I feel for you, I know exactly how you got it.
And can I say something?
Yeah, I'd like to say.
What does the center of town look like? It looks like a piece of shit.
Well, if you own that hotel and somebody offered that money, you can't tell me you took that offer. Don't sit there and tell me that. And you don't think you live in town, do you? You do?
No.
Anyway, I just wanted to voice my opinion because it brought up earlier.
Well, the only thing I can say to what you just said was, well, first of all, to what Sandy said, I agree that we should have hired a planner. I think that was the proper way to go for the township, for the residents, for everybody. On top of that, what you just said about Mr. Byler should be able to sell his own property, I agree with that. There's no reason we should stand in Mr. and Mrs. Byler's way of selling their property, and we're not. Mr. Byler gave witness in a planning commission meeting that 32 years ago, I believe, 31 or 32, that the Board of Supervisors went to him at that particular time, 31, 32 years ago, and said that we would like to take you from, you know, from agriculture to industrial office park. And Mr. Byler, they read to him exactly what that meant and exactly what the changes were. And Mr. Byler stated in that meeting, if I'm wrong, please correct me, is that gonna raise the value of my property? And they said, yes, it will. He said, then I'm good with it. So 32 years ago, 31, approximately somewhere in there, Mr. Byler knew, because they read it to him, that there was no distribution centers and no residential. He knew that 32 years ago. So to sit here and tell me that I'm holding them up from selling their property, that's not true. They held themselves up 32 years ago. I had nothing to do with that. So 32 years ago, the Bylers knew that they couldn't build homes there. They knew that.
So going off what Jeff said, 30-some years ago, the Bylers knew that they were changing the zoning to IOP. 27 years ago, they came before this board, and I was on the board, and presented a plan with an industrial warehouse, a distribution warehouse. And he saw the pushback from it. There were double the amount of people in this room than there is right now.
Well, that was never allowed in that zoning law, ever.
No.
I have time to talk now. All I'm saying is that 27 years ago, he brought a plan before us, and he was pretty much belittled by all the residents that they didn't want that. And you're absolutely right, it was brought up about a residential development. So, you know, Mr. Byler actually retracted what he put in front of us with the warehouse. And it sat for sale for 4 years. 4 years your property sat for sale. It wasn't then and only then that Burke's Homes actually approached them. Normally when a plan goes before our planning commission, they turn that plan around within 30 days. There's no reason that our planning commission had to sit on this for 13 months, which goes back to what my father said about what they drug him through with the Morgantown Hotel.
You're talking about different things. If you start.
I'm not done talking, Alan. You can sit back. You could have talked during the time when it was open, but I'm not done. So where I'm going with this, though, is that tonight we had 9 people speak. 9. Roughly, we have over 4,100 residents in our town. Last census was 4,006. That was 2010. I think the new one might be right around 4,120 people. Okay? Out of the 9 people that spoke tonight, 4 are non-residents. 1 was an attorney, and 2 were planners, all from outside of our town. The 2 residents that did speak, 1 lives in Highcroft. And you know what? They're directly affected by this, and they support it. And there's over almost 75 homes in your development? 50.
I live in Highcroft, I don't support it. You can mark one down.
That's fine, okay? You didn't speak tonight either, so, anyway, all I'm saying is that I support the Byler decision to do this. You know, something.
Another question, 2017, what was the value of the property when they wanted to sell it? And what would they earn on that money if they didn't invest in it? So what's it worth today from 2017? And could the Byler group buy it? There was an offer on the table.
I can't answer what that was, and I can't answer why the Bylers did what they did.
Well, this township has changed zoning several times for them to benefit on properties.
And you've changed zoning when you were on the board as well.
Are you gonna do it for all the property, owners?
You've done it as well, Alan, when you were on the board.
What?
You've changed zoning as well.
I know I did, actually for one of his properties for the shed place.
Okay,
Yes.
what about the townhouses in town? C4 doesn't allow townhouses without a variance. Take the one across the street from the beer distributor. Look at the zoning under C4.
We didn't change that, that was a
We allowed it.
thing, that was already approved before I was on.
That's here nor there. That has nothing to do with what we're talking about.
I think pretty much has been said tonight, and it's all gone different ways. There's a decision that has to be made, and does it have to be tonight? No, it doesn't have to be, but there's people waiting to know what's going to change their lives, good or bad or otherwise. And I think we need to make a decision here, not necessarily tonight if the vote's not there, that's fine. But I think we need to make a decision so whatever's going to happen can move forward.
Okay, so I'm going back to my statement of not fighting Burke's, but saying we should have had an advocate on our side. We should have hired a professional so they can go through what Burke submits to us, and we can work together to what's best for the township, and that everyone agrees on. I mean, I'm looking at this stuff, everything comes from Burke's. Well, that's coming from Burke's, not that, I can't say I don't trust him, but we should have someone on the township side saying, okay, well, here's what it normally is. Kind of like they did with the O'Rourke, she brought this information to us. I mean, I'm looking through this stuff and I'm thinking, okay, well, yeah, why wouldn't we do this? Why wouldn't Burke's do the 40% or, I don't wanna rush this, this is a one-time deal.
Mr.
We can't
Chairperson,
turn it back.
if I may, Bill Colby, Council to Burke's. We worked with Township Planning Commission supervisor staff 14 months. During that 14-month period, Township could have engaged a land planner. It didn't. We submitted all of the information that was requested by the Township. We explained the information that we submitted. The ordinance was drafted based on input from the Township. The ordinance addressed all the Township's questions. It seems late in the game now to throw it back to
But it's
the
not too
land
late.
planner.
Ground hasn't been broken and we can still make sure we're protecting everyone in the township.
14 months into the project. In the process.
Late, this was a done deal last October, you're the ones that revamped this.
Okay.
Well, as a lifelong resident, I can tell you right now, if there's not gonna be an airport there, I would rather see a mixed residential development than all commercial. I'm sorry.
Terry,
I just wanted to say, again, I don't have any skin in this game. I don't know what the right use of that property is, but I don't know if you just received the information that was provided to you today, is it really prudent to make a decision tonight without reviewing it, or did you guys have it beforehand? That's my only comment.
from the professional planners, we just received this information.
So would it not be prudent to
Well, that's where we
review
wanted
it?
to hire a planner, but it was voted down because they didn't want to spend the money.
But those professional planners wanna see commercial rather than residential. Which is
But the-
very obvious
but
by
the
what they said
planners-
and what we're reading here.
But the planners have to do what we want them, research what we want and come up with the best ideas with what we want. And from what Burks has submitted.
But as a lifelong resident, no one knows this town better than we do. I'm not gonna let some guy from Westchester tell me how to run my
Well,
town.
they're not gonna tell us how to run it. They're the professional planners to give us ideas and to make sure that we're doing the right thing the first time.
And all I'm saying is that they're pointing toward, commercial, all 56 acres of all commercial IoT.
So if we would hire them, then we tell them, here's what we want, this is what Burks wants. We wanna make sure that we're not being taken advantage of, that our residents aren't being taken advantage of. What insights do you have? And they can give us pointers. I mean, is that too much to ask for? Michelle?
Both the planners that you were gonna hire just gave documentation. Obviously, whoever they work for is who they're gonna give the results to.
No.
I mean,
whoever we hire, we tell them
they
what
are
we
the
want.
two that we were gonna hire, right there, Hawk Valley and Committo.
Terry?
I will donate $3,000 of my own dollars to hire a consultant and help you guys with that money. I will offer that if you go that direction, $3,000. Thank you.
Is anyone willing to hire a planner to make sure that we're doing this right? I mean, Burke's Homes, I mean, it's not about fighting them, it's not about saving the airport. This is about doing the right thing now, and making sure we go forward and it's done right. And we have no regrets. That's all it is.
I have no regrets, I don't want to hire.
Jeff?
I'd like to see a plan.
I'd like to see a planner. Rick?
I don't think we need a plan.
And who wants to vote tonight?
I do.
I'd like to make a vote tonight.
I do not.
No.
Chris?
Make a motion?
I'll vote tonight.
Okay, Eric, here we go.
Motion to enact the residential, sorry, get the. You make a motion to enact the industrial office park mixed-use housing residential housing overlay district in the form presented.
voted on. We have no, we can't change anything in there.
Can't go backwards.
Ridiculous.
That's the question.
I don't agree with
You cannot.
Yes, once,
So we have no say over, what do we have say over
once
that? Once it's voted on.
once you enact any zoning ordinance amendment, it becomes the law of the land. So any future application that is filed will need to demonstrate compliance with the zoning ordinance criteria within the ordinance. So, for example, if you use 20-foot setbacks and an application is filed and then you change your mind and you want to see 30-foot setbacks, well, it's too late because the ordinance only requires 20-foot. You can't change the regulations once it's enacted. But that presumes that the application gets filed and that the application is then pending. So I don't know what Berks Homes' time frame is with regard to filing an application itself, but that's what would happen. It's evident that there may be a challenge to the ordinance, which would get filed in the zoning hearing board, procedural or substantive validity challenge. So you have that prospect as well. That might impact the time frame for Berks in terms of their application as well. So that's the general. If there's no application pending, you can amend the ordinance over and over again up until the time that the application itself is filed. And that sort of gets to a question asked very early on in the process, is what's the time frame? Well, the time frame really is driven by when the application is filed by a landowner or a developer. That could happen in a month or 6 months or a year.
And then
You
you
don't
have an
control it.
opportunity to say, okay, 30-foot line, 32-foot line, we have all that done.
You would not have the opportunity to change the ordinance. And so what is in this ordinance is what you will need to live
We
with
agreed on a 30-foot road, right?
in terms of roads. Yeah.
Like parking on one side versus the other side. Is that in there?
I believe parking is in there. And so
Everything's in there.
you would live with this. And occasionally there are unintended consequences that you have to live with.
What if I'm dedicating a road? That's not in there.
I don't think it compels dedication or not. It provides for the opportunity to have the road stay private. Ultimately, dedication will be, correct, that will be something that ultimately the board will consider. And under this PRD process, there will be a public hearing to address the actual application itself, and the details of the design, etc. But as of this date, you live with the ordinance that you enact, and so there is a certain flexibility or freedom for Berks Homes to modify the sketch plan or the concept. There's no contract, there's no binding ability for you to limit them to what they've proposed in sketch plan format. It's really going to be driven by the ordinance amendment in its final form as it's enacted, subject to any legal challenges in any of it.
So basically, the one they submitted here, we pretty much, we can't ask for any changes or.
If they submit that proposal and it's determined through a zoning review that it complies with all aspects of the zoning ordinance, then you would have certain obligations to approve the plan as it relates to zoning. There'd be separate saldo and other stormwater provisions that would also be equal force, but yes, when it relates to zoning, yes. They could modify that plan and they're free to do that as long as it then meets the definitions and the criteria within your ordinance.
There is still a full planning process that we need to adhere to. And we do have another hearing on the PRD section of the ordinance, which was pulled in to the overlay. So there'll be a full hearing on the plan when it's submitted.
So has it any changes been made to this particular one? Do you have any provisions in mind for this? Like 3 homes that are right up against my property, and the neighbor here, how come there's no trees down along here? I mean, these guys have a full.
Chairperson, we're looking at all options, including the objection that you made, the homes being right up against the property. But we haven't gone through the expense of full engineered plans yet. We're waiting to do that.
Well, I was just asking your intentions, so I
I would say we consider that. And until we look at stormwater and how everything goes, we'll bring it back. And engineering.
Anyone else? Okay, any motion?
I make a motion we adopt the ordinance for the overlay.
I'll second.
Motion and a second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
No.
Opposed? No.
Opposed.
Okay, 3-4, 2 against.
So the adoption of the ordinance passes 3-6.
There ain't no town more messed up than Eagle. Question.
Did you hear that? We're gonna make some changes, we're gonna scratch number 1, if that's okay, Barry. And on the 3rd, just put during our meeting to the back of the room, each side.
Okay, I can't hear you. What are you saying?
For the video recording,
Yeah, I can't hear you. What do you say?
you need to be at the side of the room or to the back of the room.
I'm always on the side.
Yeah, this is not,
Yeah.
we're discussing
It's
this.
the
To back
ordinance
of
though,
room or
it's
to
the
the side.
rule, right?
I'm sorry,
It's
Mike.
the new rule for where you would have to be if you're recording. Is
Yeah,
that
so
what
you're not
discussing?
sitting in the middle when we have a whole crowd and we have people that wanna be up front, like
Yeah.
Mark Holmes took the whole front seat. Normally, they would be videotaping from the front seats. Well, you can't do that, we need them seated up here.
But it says Michelle can't sit here.
Yeah, I sit on the
Because
side.
Michelle can sit right there.
I
But
sit
you're
on the
going
side.
right now on the side, it's fine.
Yeah, well, I can't do that in the other room, it's too small.
We could put you in the bathroom.
That's why FMC was farther up than I was, so.
Eric, did you get those comments then?
Yes, scratch number 1 in its entirety.
Yeah, I don't know that we need that.
What is number 1?
That the chairperson presiding over the meeting and the general public at the beginning of the meeting, his or her intent to record all portions of the public meeting as well as whether to record video, audio, or both.
Yeah,
What's
well,
the matter?
legally, I could just be like this for the camera, to be totally honest, and you can't see anything, legally.
Michelle?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just saying, that's exactly, it doesn't make any sense, yeah.
Okay, so anything else?
Well, I have a question about that. So like, when we do our meeting minutes, every meeting, we have to wait till the next month to approve it to make it official. By recording it live, how does that coincide with us making it official?
It's not a recording of the township, so it has no bearing on township operations.
So what's written is
rewrite that and bring it up again.
Any interest of doing it yourself?
Nice try.
15 Oxford Drive waiver.
I kept
request for
response
fence
tonight,
permits. Okay, so you have a request in front of you. It looks like the fence is an open space.
I guess that's based on Terry's assumption, I guess. I was going with, there's already a fence in the back of the house with the neighbors, and we were just gonna go with the same line as it.
There's an open space easement along the back of the properties on Oxford. And the board has in the past basically required anybody that wanted to put something in that open space to come for a waiver. And that's why,
Okay, but aren't we trying to clean the open space up? Have them move their stuff out of there, sheds and trees?
There's no sheds, I've been cutting, there's nothing, I've been cutting down the weeds that grow there for 15, 16 years now.
But we're running into problems with people putting stuff in the open space, and they shouldn't be.
Highcroft?
Anywhere in the township.
Oh,
in the open
I would
space.
say it's just a bunch of trees.
It's just trees and.
There's nobody's
behind
putting
it are the
buildings or
other
anything in
weeds.
there.
Yeah,
I think it was brought to our attention by our road crew guy that there's a pipe easement that runs.
that's on this side, so I think what we're gonna do is.
That would be my concern.
No, and that's the one where we're gonna try to, and when we had the fence people come, they did mention they have to be a few feet away from it. I think you had said it had to be 20, which I think puts it right at the edge of my house, so we are gonna redesign that section of it.
This is a fucking joke.
So,
Joe, you can just knock them off. Yeah, we don't need to hear that.
but yeah.
So what you're saying is the fence on the back of your property goes out beyond your property line, it's on an open space?
I can show you a picture I got, I can show you a picture that Great Valley sent me, I'm not.
the fence isn't going beyond the property line, but there's an open space easement on the back of the property. So he wants to put the fence into the open space easement.
That's what.
But how's that affect us?
Well,
Do you need to get in there?
I thought only the side beyond the property.
Okay.
Yeah, he had mentioned the side, not the.
Oh,
not the-
there's just an easement that runs through his property.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay, but on the
Okay.
back of his house though, is there a pipe or anything in the back of his house?
No, it stops on the,
Right on the
there's
side.
like a sewer between my house and the next door neighbor's house, a storm drain, that takes the puddle of water that we get every time it rains.
And you have neighbors that have the fence,
There's
they're
a-
gonna taking the same line,
Yes,
correct?
the neighbor behind you already has their white fences up there, and it's like right on the same red line here.
So when you go down along that pipe, you'll still be in the easement? No,
That,
not at all.
the
Okay.
fence isn't touching to that at all.
Okay, so,
Well, the only thing I can say there is that if we do have an easement and you are across our easement, I want you to keep in mind, and it should maybe be worded that way, that if we ever need to gain access to that easement, that fence is in our way. So as long as you understand that.
Like I said, I've been there 15 years.
Yeah, I mean, and you know what, I
nothing
don't know
is
what
up
would
to-
make us have to get through there, but an easement was put in there for a reason.
Not a
I just
problem.
wanna make sure that you know that if we have to get up there for some reason, that we would definitely notify them if we had to get up there. You know, if we notify you, say, hey, listen, we need to get up there, either take your fence down or we're taking it down kind of thing, but.
Not a problem.
I would like to see in the waiver, as long as Keith, it obstructs nothing of ours, right?
What he's looking for is going to the rear of the house, the stormwater easement is to the side, right side of the house.
So the only,
So he's,
So what is the easement on the back for though?
there isn't, that's the,
Open space.
Oh, and you said open space
It's
easement.
just open space.
Okay.
I mean, I have the picture, I guess I was sent from Great Valley.
yeah, I mean, as
Shows
long
the
as it's
picture.
not gonna interfere with us getting in there, then I have no problem with this.
the only thing that I would anticipate about it, there is a small piece of open space back there, the trees, and some of them are tall and big.
so I would like to see the landowner in the waiver acknowledges responsibility of being in an open space, and if it has to be removed for some reason, they understand that, and they portray that to the next buyer, should you sell. That way that eliminates us.
We would record the agreement,
Yes.
so there's no surprise by a subsequent purchaser, so there would be a cost to record. That's cost, not cost prohibitive, but it's probably $50 or $100 or something at the county's office to do, so that would accomplish your goal.
And is there trees within falling distance of that fence? I mean,
There's trees within falling distance of every house.
Every house,
Each
yeah.
direction, they're really
They're
big.
all in that whole back side,
Yeah.
okay.
they sway in the wind every.
And I would note, there's, how many neighbors have done the exact same thing up and down that middle? It's pretty.
It's not, we're not
No, I
saying
get your
no
point about the
anybody.
waiver, or
We're
the.
just trying to get it squared away, because the problem in the township throughout
Yeah, the.
is that people just put them in. And
Yeah.
then when we have to come through there to clean out a storm drain,
Oh, I know.
whatever it may be, there's trees and fence and shit.
There are no drains, there are no drains up there or anything. It's just.
So we're just trying to eliminate all those
Oh, I understand.
possibilities.
Okay, do we need a vote on that? Here,
I think so.
okay, so someone wanna make a motion to,
I'll make it that.
Second.
okay, do we need any special subject to?
Subject to an agreement that's recorded in a form acceptable to the township.
Motion and a second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Yeah, what'll happen is we'll get the agreement together and then send it to you for execution. And then, we'll process the permit.
Do you wanna be a part of that with Terry, Keith?
Terry knows, he's got a good understanding what you're doing there.
Okay. Draft weed ordinance.
All right, Scott and Ted put the paperwork out, and, North Miami Township, actually what's on the minutes today, what I did, I'm hoping to try to get that locked in the morning time. It's really an eyesore to me, and I wanna get it done, so, I'm gonna, we're gonna make it, for don't hurt the farmers and stuff, I thought, well, we'd make it 2-acre lots or less. That way it don't interfere with farmers or anything else. And, we're gonna make it 6 inches high, and, I just crossed out what I thought it would be, but I think Eric, if the board's okay with that, I'm gonna give it to Eric and have him, you know, reword it. Okay?
Well, don't,
Yeah.
we still have a weed ordinance that we used to have, right? Can we kind of take what we had?
I know, I thought it was taken out.
Don't we have one,
You
Eric?
have it, it's within the nuisance ordinance, and so it's our recommendation that you repeal the nuisance ordinance and just have a standalone weed ordinance. So we would do both at the same time.
But all I'm saying is that maybe take some from there and make one. You know what I mean? Do we have something that we can kind of put it all together?
As it relates to weeds, it's very small in the nuisance, it just basically requires cutting twice per year.
Yep. And this one has, once before June, regardless of height and length, and at least one time on or before August, each regardless of height or length. So, once again, only twice a year, unless you're in violation of the height, then they want you to mow more.
I think it's a good deal.
Yeah, I think we can look at it and build on it.
Okay, so do you wanna start with these, and then we'll review it again, and
So now, Eric, I think we briefly touched on this one before. What can we do with that property there? Can we do something to get that by eminent domain and take it over?
Well, you can always condemn property for public use if you pay just compensation for the value of the property. So typically, you don't do that just because there's weeds. So when there's weeds, it's similar to what Terry does with every other code violation. He'll send notices of violation. They may or may not respond. They may then escalate to a citation. They go to district court and get fined, and you're hoping that through that process, they simply just show up and mow, or they call a contractor to do that. And I think with that specific property, when the structure was there, the homeowner did respond and pay for the demolition of that structure. They don't live in the area, if I recall, but they are able to, at least at that point in time, pick up the phone and call a contractor and do that. So